Hello everyone, I'm here to discuss the most important current affairs of today from UPSC and State PSC point of view. Today's articles have been taken from The Hindu, The Indian Express and Financial Express. Before I begin, I would request you to subscribe to my channel and never miss any update. So without further ado, let's begin. Our first article is from Financial Express, which says that FTAs or free trade agreements should be leveraged by India to increase the FDI inflow. The article states that countries nowadays are adopting FTAs to gain access to each other's markets, improve exports, and also to increase the foreign investments from outside the FTA. I'll explain the last line with an example. Consider two countries, A and B, having a foreign trade agreement. Country A has a high tariff and large domestic market. The firms based in country C may decide to invest in country A to cater to the investment in a country A to cater to A's domestic market. However, once A and B sign a foreign trade agreement, B offers a better business environment. So C may decide to locate its plant in B to supply its products to A so as to get the benefits of the free trade agreement. Further, the article says that traditionally, FDI in manufacturing gets attracted to protected markets or markets where there is no free trade and there are tariffs on imports, where it is cheaper to set up a manufacturing unit rather than paying a tariff to serve the market through exports. As per the report of World Bank of 2002, high tariffs on imported goods in the UK, Canada, and Australia induced FDI inflows in manufacturing in that year. The article further states the factors that influence a multinational company's decision to undertake FDI. They are infrastructure, human capital, tax policy consistency in the host country, size of the host market, etc. Now let us look at what FTAs look like. So the free trade agreements are arrangements between two or more countries or trading blocs that primarily agree to reduce or eliminate custom tariff and non-tariff barriers on substantial trade between them. Free trade agreements normally cover trade in goods such as agricultural or industrial products or trade in services such as banking, construction, trading, etc. FTAs can also cover other areas such as intellectual property rights, investments, government procurement, and competition policy, etc. Now let us have a look at the advantages of FTAs. Free trade enables countries to specialize in those goods in which they have a comparative advantage. Countries can gain additional goods which they are less efficient at producing. FTAs encourage spread of innovation of technology from one country to other countries. FTAs also induce a higher level of living standards. It also offers lower prices due to the international competitiveness. FTAs leads to higher exports, thus increasing employment and growth of the economy. Another important point is that if countries can specialize in certain goods, they can benefit from economies of scale. Economies of scale basically means the cost advantage is reaped when production becomes efficient, that is, an increase in production at lower cost. This is especially true in industries with high fixed cost or that require high level of investment. The benefit of economies of scale will ultimately lead to lower prices for consumers and greater efficiency for exporting firms. The markets of FTA partners can be served from a single unified location. Thus, firms grow beyond what they would have been able to in the national market of a single country. The article further mentions that FTAs can come in handy when partner countries are similarly endowed and competing for the same commodities. In the wake of the pandemic, we have realized that we need a reliable and resilient supply and multiple trade partners to avoid any disruptions in the supply chain. Thus, investments are moving horizontally rather than vertically. So let us look at horizontal and vertical investments. A horizontal investment occurs when a company establishes the same type of business operation in a foreign country as it operates in its home country. For example, Toyota assembles cars in both the United States as well as China. A vertical investment, on the other hand, is one in which different but related business activities from the investor's main business are established or acquired in a foreign country. For example, a manufacturing company acquires shares of a foreign company which supplies raw materials to it. The next article is about the new e-commerce rules. These rules impose certain conditions on the e-commerce companies to the benefit of both buyers and sellers. So let us have a look at each of them one by one. They put a ban on specific flash sales or back-to-back sales, which limit the customer's choice. They have now put in a fallback liability clause, which means that e-commerce firms will be held liable in case a seller on their platform fails to deliver goods or services due to negligent conduct, which causes loss to the customer. The new e-commerce rules restrict the e-commerce firms from manipulating search results and preventing the preferential treatment of certain sellers on the platform. The companies will have to provide domestic alternatives to the imported goods. Any online retailer will first have to register with DPIIT, which is the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. The parties and associated enterprises related to e-commerce companies will not be allowed to enlisted on the respective platforms as sellers. The last point is that a grievance officer, a chief compliance officer, and a nodal officer will have to be appointed for 24/7 coordination with the government. Talking about the last point, in a previous lecture, we saw how this will cause a permanent establishment or PE clause of taxation to kick in, and the companies will be taxed to the tune of 25 to 42%, while they are currently being taxed at 6% equalization levy and 2% additional tax. The next article talks about IT rule on deposits in cash up to Rs 2.5 lakh. In a case involving a housewife, the IT Appellate Tribunal or the ITAT has held that deposits up to Rs 2.5 lakh by housewives will not be scrutinized. Post demonetization, the IT department had said that deposits up to Rs 2.5 lakh will not be scrutinized and only those accounts will be probed that do not match the tax returns. The ITAT's ruling is binding on the applicant and the jurisdiction tax officer and is used as reference in similar matters. Let us read about the ITAT or the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. It is known as a mother tribunal since it is the oldest tribunal in the country. It is a quasi-judicial institution, that means its jurisdiction is bound by the act by which it is established. It was set up in 1941 under the IT Act of 1922. It deals with appeals under the Direct Taxes Acts, namely the IT Act of 1961. The orders passed by ITAT are final and appeal can be made in the High Court only if a substantial question of law arises for determination. On January 25, 2021, the ITAT celebrated its 80th Foundation Day. The next article is about the extension of free grains scheme. The PMGKAY or the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana is a part of the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package to help the poor fight the battle against COVID-19. Its nodal ministry is the Ministry of Finance. It was initially announced for a 3-month period, April, May and June of 2020, covering 80 crore ration holders. Later, it was extended till November 2020. This year, in April, the government again introduced this scheme in view of the pandemic. Now, it has been extended till November 2020. The scheme aimed at providing each person who is covered under the NFSA or the National Food Security Act of 2013 with an additional 5 kg grains for free in addition to the 5 kg of subsidized food grain already provided through the PDS or public distribution system. Now the new version of PMGKAY lacks one of its important components, which was there in the 2020 PMGKAY package, that is, the free of cost 1 kg pulse per month to each household covered under the NFSA. The PMGKAY will cost the exchequer Rs 94,000 crore, while last year the expenditure was to the tune of Rs 1.2 lakh crore. The additional spending by the extension of the scheme will be done using the surplus that RBI has provided to the government of Rs 50,000 crore. The next article talks about RBI's accommodative stance and inflation. So let us read about the accommodative stance. Accommodative monetary policy of RBI refers to low interest rates, that means a lower cost of borrowing, thus boosting the economic growth. The article mentions that with the rising inflation, RBI is caught in the dilemma between inflation targeting, which is its monetary policy function, and boosting of growth. The article mentions that RBI has chosen growth over inflation targeting, which is understandable. The RBI is bound to give a written explanation to the Ministry of Finance in case the inflation breaches the 2 to 6% target for 3 consecutive quarters. Currently, the low interest rates are enabling the center and the state to borrow and invest more. Let us take this opportunity to read about inflation. Inflation means the rise in the general level of prices of goods and services over a period of time. It may be a month or a year. The article mentions that inflation is beneficial for the borrowers. The logic behind this is that inflation allows borrowers to pay the lenders back with money which is worth less than it was when it was originally borrowed. So the article says that the government is one of the biggest borrowers and thus it stands to benefit due to the rising inflation, as high inflation lowers the national debt loan in relation to the size of the economy. The current repo rate is 4% and thus the real rate adjusted for inflation is negative, which means that when you're keeping money in the banks, either in your savings account or a fixed deposit, whatever you're getting back is actually a negative rate of return, since we have seen that in the month of May, the retail inflation was 6.3%. So people are moving their savings from bank deposits, which are fetching negative returns, to some risky assets like the equities. Now let us look at some of the remedies for the high inflation and the economic slump in India's economy. What we need is the supply side interventions like cut in excise rates and state sales tax on petroleum. Also, the government needs to increase the spending on creation of assets. In the last current affairs session, we also talked about capital expenditure, so you can check out that video. Another remedy can be wealth tax. A survey in 2018 found out that in India, top 1% people own nearly 58% of the total wealth of the nation. Another remedy can be the inheritance tax. Also, impetus can be given to schemes such as the Manrega. The next article talks about the confusion over the current Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, who has not yet been elected. The current Uttarakhand CM has not been elected and he has to get elected by 10th of September 2021. This is because, as per Article 164, Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, a minister who for any period of 6 consecutive months is not a member of the legislature of the state shall at the expiration of that period cease to be a minister. The article mentions that the options available to the Chief Minister are first, by-polls, but it is not possible as of now because of the pandemic. The second option, which might have been available, is the nomination to the State Legislative Council, which is also not possible since Uttarakhand is unicameral, that is, it has only the State Assembly and no State Legislative Council. The article also mentions that the Representation of People Act 1951 puts an exception to the bipole, which is mentioned under the Article 164 Part 4. It says that there is no need to conduct bipoles if there is a less than 1 year term left for the minister. The second point mentioned is that if the Election Commission, in consultation with the central government, clarifies that conducting bipoles is not possible, then it will not be required. A similar issue lies in West Bengal, where the Chief Minister Ms. Mamata Banerjee has not been elected, as she has lost from her constituency, Nandigram. So she was planning to create a legislative council. So let us see how legislative councils can be created. According to Article 169 of the Indian Constitution, the Parliament can create or abolish legislative councils of a state if the state's legislature passes a resolution for the same with a special majority. The size of the legislative council cannot be more than 1/3 of the legislative assembly, but it also cannot be less than 40 members. Currently, only 6 states in India have a legislative council. They are UP, Bihar, Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka. The next article states that an Olympic medalist, Karnam Malleshwari, has been appointed as the first Vice Chancellor of Delhi Sports University. Karnam Malleshwari is also the first Indian woman to have won a medal at the Olympics. Our next article talks about how Tamil Nadu has omitted the use of the term central government in its documents, and hence this can be seen as a major step towards regaining the consciousness of our constitution. Tamil Nadu instead used the term union government. The article mentions that Article 1 of the Indian Constitution says that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. The term center or central government is not mentioned in the Constitution deliberately because it shows concentration of power and thus harms the federal structure of our Indian Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, stated that the Indian Federation is a union because it is indestructible, that is, no states can secede from it. The members of the Constituent Assembly were very cautious of not using the word center or central government in the Constitution, as they intended to keep away the tendency of centralizing of powers in one unit. Even though the federal nature of the Constitution is its basic feature and cannot be altered, it also says that the judiciary is designed in the Constitution to ensure that the Supreme Court, which is the tallest court of the country, has no superintendence over the high courts. Though the Supreme Court has appellate jurisdiction, they are not declared to be superior to the high courts. In the domain of the states and the union, both are equivalent and they derive their power from the Indian Constitution. So that's all for today from my side. Do write in the comment section if you have any queries regarding a particular topic. Thank you so much.